She hadn't spoken to another soul in 2 days. Her suitcase sat closed beside her feet like it was afraid to open. The man who promised to marry her never came, and the whole town of Millbrook watched her sit on that bench like she was furniture nobody wanted to move. On the third evening, when she'd finally let her shoulders drop, a quiet farmer walked onto that platform, looked at her like she still mattered, and said 4 words nobody had said to her in a long time. "Let me help you." If you've ever been forgotten by someone who swore they'd stay, this story's for you. Subscribe, drop your city in the comments, and let's see how far this one travels. She counted the change in her coat pocket without taking it out, just pressing her fingers against the coins through the fabric, feeling how few there were. That was the moment Margaret Ellis understood she was truly alone. Not the kind of alone a phone call could fix, but the kind that had settled into her chest and stayed there, quiet and heavy, like the empty bus depot around her. She had watched 4 buses come and go since she arrived in Millbrook, Tennessee. 4 arrivals, 4 departures, and not once had a man named Daniel Cross stepped off any of them. The bench she sat on was cold metal, and it had left a mark across the back of her legs through her thin dress, the yellow one she'd bought specifically because Daniel had told her over the phone that yellow suited her voice, whatever that meant, whatever she'd let herself believe it meant. Her hair had come loose from its clip hours ago, and she hadn't bothered fixing it. Around her, the depot moved with its ordinary business, indifferent to her particular grief. A cashier from the diner across the road had brought her a cup of water around noon without being asked, set it down, and walked away before Margaret could properly thank her, which told Margaret everything about how she must look sitting there. The station manager, an older man named Grady, had asked if she needed anything by the second day. He'd asked once, gotten the same hopeful answer both times, and quietly given up on the question. She had been a nurse's aide in Ohio, nothing grand, but steady work and a small apartment and Sunday calls with her mother before her mother passed the year before. Daniel had found her through an online forum for people relocating for work, and his messages had been patient and warm, in a way nothing else in her life had been since the funeral. He'd written about his family's farm outside Millbrook, about wanting a partner who understood hard work and quiet evenings, about needing her specifically. "Come to Tennessee," he'd written. "I'll be at the station Thursday. We'll start fresh." Thursday had come and gone. This was the 3rd evening after, and Daniel Cross had not come. Margaret opened her hand and looked at nothing in it, because there was nothing left to look at, just the ghost of the coins she'd already spent on the water she should have taken free, and a granola bar from a vending machine 2 days ago. She thought about Ohio, about whether her old employer would take her back, about whether this was the story people would tell her now. She did not cry. She had done that already, in the dark of the depot bathroom the first night, until her chest ached, and then she had washed her face and decided she was finished with that particular kind of surrender. She heard the truck before she saw it, an engine that idled low and unhurried, pulling into the gravel lot beside the depot. She didn't look up right away. Trucks came and went in Millbrook constantly. But something in the way this one parked, careful, unbothered by anyone watching, made her lift her eyes. The man who stepped out was broad-shouldered, wearing a canvas jacket that had clearly seen years of weather, sleeves pushed to his forearms despite the October chill. He moved like someone who didn't need to hurry to be taken seriously. He said something brief to Grady through the depot door, and Grady's answer drifted out. "Been there 3 days now." Then boots on the platform, unhurried, deliberate. He stopped in front of her. She kept her eyes on her hands, bracing for the question everyone asked. Instead, he said, quietly, "How long you been sitting here?" She looked up, dark eyes, steady, not flinching at how worn she'd become. 3 days, she said. He nodded slowly, like he'd confirmed something he already suspected. "Whoever you were waiting on didn't show."
not a question. "No," she said, "he didn't."
He looked down the empty road for a moment, the way it stretched flat toward the horizon, then back at her. Then stopped waiting on someone who chose not to come. The words moved through her like cold water, plain, not cruel, and somehow the plainness was worse than cruelty would have been. "Easy to say," she told him. "Most true things are," he said. He took off his cap, just a habit, not a performance. "Name's Caleb Whitfield. Got a farm about 20 minutes out. I'm headed back now." "I don't know you," she said. "No," he agreed, "you don't. You're offering a ride to a stranger?" "I'm offering a woman who sat on a cold bench 3 days a place to be warm tonight." He glanced at her suitcase. "That everything you've got?" "That's everything." He nodded again. "My hired hand's wife cooks Thursdays. It's Thursday. You'd eat something hot." She studied him for a long moment. She understood exactly what the world did to women who got into strange men's trucks, understood the risk plainly. She also had nothing and nowhere. "Why?" she asked. He looked at her steadily. "Nobody ought to sit on a bench till they disappear." It wasn't romantic, it wasn't heroic. It was a man who looked at something wrong and found it unacceptable, and that plainness decided her. She stood. Her legs were stiff. "I'm Margaret Ellis," she said. "I was a nurse's aide back in Ohio." "Caleb Whitfield," he said again. "I run cattle and hay mostly." He lifted her suitcase like it weighed nothing and carried it to the truck. Grady came out onto the platform as they were leaving. "She's your concern now, Whitfield." Caleb didn't look at him. "She's her own concern, Grady. Always was." The drive out of Millbrook wound past dry fields turning gold with the season, fences and long open pasture, and Margaret felt something in her chest loosen slightly, the first easy breath she'd taken in 3 days. "How long's the farm been yours?" she asked. "Since my father passed, 10 years now." "You have help?" "2. Ruth and her husband, Sam. Sam runs cattle with me. Ruth keeps the house better than I do." A pause. "House needs keeping. I'm not much for it." She almost smiled, an unfamiliar motion in her face. "That's honest. I try to be." "What was his name?" Caleb asked eventually. "The one who didn't come." She considered not answering. "Daniel Cross. We talked online, messaged for 6 months." 6 months is a long time. Felt longer. She looked at the fields passing. "He wrote things that made me feel chosen, specifically, not just anyone." "Not your fault," Caleb said. "I know that in my head. I just wanted to say it to someone who wasn't going to tell me I should have known better." "People usually do." "I'm not people usually," he said, without pride, and somehow it landed as simple fact. The farm came into view, a low farmhouse in a big barn against the darkening sky, cattle in the distance, a garden along the south side that had clearly been planted with knowledge and then neglected for weeks. Sam came out of the barn when he heard the truck, gave Margaret an unsurprised nod. "Found someone at the depot," Caleb said, handing him the keys. "Ruth's got stew going," Sam said. "There's always enough," Caleb said, and the ease of the exchange made Margaret ache faintly for something she wasn't part of yet. Ruth met them at the door, flour on her apron, taking Margaret in fully within a few seconds without making it feel invasive. "You look hungry," she said. "I haven't eaten properly in 2 days," Margaret admitted, surprising herself. "Come on then." Caleb put her bag in the back room. That evening at the table, Caleb said, not quite looking at her, "There's work here if you want it, not charity. Ruth does more than one person should. Garden's a mess. Fence on the east side is leaning." He looked at his coffee. "I only know cattle, not what needs doing around a house." "You're saying you need help," Margaret said. "I'm saying there's work. If you want a direction, there's one." She thought about the granola bar, the Ohio apartment now rented to someone else, the way Daniel's silence had felt like a verdict on her worth. She thought about the leaning fence and the tangled garden. "I'll stay," she said. Caleb nodded once, like her answer was simply the reasonable end of a reasonable set of facts.
Room's yours, lock's on the inside. He said it plainly, so you don't have to wonder. The days that followed took a shape she hadn't expected, not temporary, but settling. She rose early, worked the garden mornings, helped Ruth with the house afternoons, and found a rhythm with useful hands that let her mind go quiet for the first time in months. Caleb was in and out with the cattle, tired honestly by evening, never complaining.
On the 5th day, she found a broken chair in the corner and fixed it herself, having learned from her father before he passed. That evening, Caleb sat in it automatically, then stopped, testing the repair. "That was you," he said. "It bothered me," she said. "Where'd you learn that?" "My father. He fixed everything himself." Something moved in Caleb's face. "Good man. The best I knew," she said. It was on the 8th day she overheard him in the barn, voice low and strained with Sam. A man named Harlan Cutter was buying up land around Millbrook, piece by piece, and had set his sights on Caleb's north hayfield, the one his father had cleared by hand. "Paper doesn't stop a man like Cutter," Sam was saying. "Paper just makes the lawyers rich." Margaret backed out quietly and worked the garden until her hands stopped shaking. That evening, she brought Caleb coffee on the porch. "You don't have to tell me anything," she said, "but if you want to, I'm not going anywhere tonight." He told her about Cutter, about the pressure campaign, about 3 neighboring farmers who'd already sold because staying had been made too hard. "It's not land I can give up," he said. "My father cleared that field with his own hands. I buried him on this land." "Is that why you live out here alone?" she asked. "Had a partner once, sold his half to Cutter without telling me first when the pressure came." He said it plainly, but she heard what it cost him. "He'll come at you again," Margaret said. "When he does, you need everything written down, dates, names, exactly what was said." She paused. "My father used to say, a person who keeps good records can prove their truth." Caleb looked at her sideways. "Your father sounds like he was smart." He was. A week later, a surveyor's stake appeared on the north field, marked with Cutter land holdings. Margaret found the original deed in the house that evening and read every line against what she knew of the land. Everything Caleb had described was accurate. The field was clearly inside his boundary. "This is a provocation," she told him. "He wants you to react before you think. The real question is whether he's filed anything official to back this marker up." She offered to write a formal letter to the county recorder requesting confirmation of the boundary and any competing filings. A person who spent years writing careful reports knows how to make a letter count, she said. Caleb watched her write it that night with a steadiness that surprised him. "You didn't leave any room for misunderstanding," he said when she read it aloud. "That was the point." "I want you to know I don't take this for granted," he added quietly. "Some things people do, they don't get told they're noticed. It ought to be said." "I know you don't take it for granted," she answered. The response came back 11 days later. Cutter had filed a competing claim 6 weeks earlier, and notice had supposedly been sent to an address on file that Margaret quickly realized was 8 years out of date, from before Caleb had even built the current house. "That's not an accident," she said. She found the error in the citation, a statute meant for commercial transfers wrongly applied to a homestead claim, meaning the required notice had never been properly delivered and Caleb's window to contest had never actually started. "Get a lawyer to confirm it," she said, "but I'm certain." The local attorney, a careful man named Whitaker, confirmed everything and filed for reinstatement of the contest period, while also requesting the original 1958 homestead survey from the Federal Land Records Office in Nashville, since Cutter's professional survey would be difficult to challenge without it. 3 weeks of quiet tension followed. Then Daniel Cross showed up at the farm gate on a Tuesday evening. Margaret recognized him from a photograph before her mind caught up to her body's recoil. He dismounted from the truck with practiced warmth that didn't reach his eyes. "I owe you an explanation," he said. "There were circumstances."
6 weeks is a delay, she said. 3 months is a choice. His eyes flicked past her to the farmhouse, to Caleb's land, something calculating surfacing beneath the warmth. You've made arrangements, he said, not quite a question. That's not your concern, she said. Why are you really here, Daniel? Caleb stepped onto the porch behind her, having heard enough through the open window. Mr. Cross, he said mildly, you've come a long way. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing the name like he'd expected it. I came from Margaret, that's my only business. She's told you she's made other arrangements, Caleb said. That settles it. Daniel looked at Margaret one last time, warmth dropping away entirely, something colder underneath. This isn't finished, he said, before riding off.
That night, piecing it together, they realized Daniel's own land bordered Cutter's holdings on one side, with creek access running through Caleb's field. If Cutter took the field, Daniel's cattle operation gained water rights he desperately needed. Daniel hadn't chosen Margaret by accident. He'd needed a woman with a grievance who could be planted near Caleb to complicate his legal standing. I was part of someone else's plan, Margaret said quietly. That doesn't change what I chose after, she added. Getting in that truck, that was mine. Cutter escalated exactly as Caleb predicted. The feed supplier failed to deliver. Merchants grew quiet and cautious. Margaret and Ruth rode into town together, and at the general store, the owner admitted in a low voice that Cutter's man had implied that businesses supporting the losing side might see their credit reviewed. I have a daughter married to one of his men, she said, torn. Margaret answered gently. What if the losing side isn't as certain as he's letting on? She explained the statute error, the federal survey request, the strength of what they'd already filed. The feed order arrived by the next afternoon. Then came the letter that changed everything, from a retired federal surveyor named Wallace Pruitt, who'd conducted an earlier survey in the area and had heard, through old colleagues, that Cutter's filed boundary lines had been quietly altered by several feet across multiple properties before submission to the county. He still had his original field notes and was willing to submit them. The attorney filed the affidavit. Within days, the local paper ran a cautious but pointed piece questioning survey records in the Whitfield land dispute. The town's mood shifted visibly toward Caleb. Daniel tried one last maneuver, filing a claim in town that Margaret had broken some binding agreement with him from Ohio, suing for damages, clearly meant to force her off the farm and weaken Caleb's case. Margaret sat across from him in the attorney's office and said plainly, I know about Cutter. I know exactly what you needed me here for. It's already part of the record. Daniel's composure cracked visibly. He withdrew from town days later without another word. The Federal Archive confirmed the original 1958 Homestead Survey, matching Caleb's father's boundaries exactly, and noted, unprompted, that a surveying firm from Nashville, the same firm Cutter had requested to examine that very survey 6 months before filing his competing claim. He had known the true boundary. He had filed anyway. That's not just fraud, Whitaker said. That's knowing fraud. Cutter's attorneys offered a quiet settlement, a small payment in exchange for silence and no further legal action, clearly hoping to bury the matter before the prosecutor's office took interest. In 3 other farmers, Cutter had already defrauded. Caleb looked at Margaret. What do you want to do? She didn't answer for him. It was his land, his decision. I want Whitaker to reject it, he finally said. Those other families didn't have what we have. If we stay quiet, he does this again. We don't sign, Margaret agreed. The court ruled 6 weeks later. The Whitfield claim was upheld completely. Cutter's survey was declared fraudulent and referred to the prosecutor's office, opening the door for the other defrauded farmers to reclaim what they'd lost. One of them, an older man named Farris, who'd sold 2 years earlier, drove out to thank them personally, saying his wife could finally believe something was being done. That evening, alone in the kitchen, Caleb took Margaret's hands across the table. I asked you once if you'd stay, he said. I want to ask it properly now.
He said it plainly, the way he said everything that mattered. "Margaret Ellis, will you stay on this land as mine and I as yours, not out of circumstance, because you want this?" She looked at this man who had never once asked her to be less than she was. "I want this," she said. "The farm, the garden, the porch in the evenings, all of it, because I know exactly what it costs and what it gives back. Yes, Caleb, I'll stay." The first frost came that night, quiet and ordinary, the way Rio beginnings usually are. She had not been waiting to be saved. She had been waiting to arrive, and she finally had. Not the way she'd planned, but by her own hands, her own choosing, and the ordinary miracle of a man who said yes when it mattered. What is significant educational or other value in this story? It shows that real worth is proven through documented truth and quiet persistence, not promises. It teaches that recognizing manipulation, keeping records, and standing firm with patience can protect what matters most, both in love and in justice.